Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we look through the biggest stories in MMA. I'm your host, Gorgeous George, and I got some of the best in the biz here with me, all the way from the 416 reporter extraordinaire, Mike Bond. Mira eso, desde Colombia, now chilling in Sofla, Danny Segura. And of course, from the mean streets of Santa Ana, Cali, it's Goes from MMA Junkie Radio. Cold coffee on the ones and twos. Let's get to it. All right, guys, on Saturday night, Islam Makhachev defeated Bobby Green. This fight didn't even make it out of the first round, and Makhachev made it known that he wants a title shot in the lightweight division. Of course, meaning the winner of Charles Oliveira versus Justin Gaethje. Okay, so now the question here is, which matchup would be more favorable to Makhachev? And why? Should he actually be favored against them as well? I want to know that. I mean, he's 22-1 overall, 11-1 in the UFC, and he's won 10 in a row. 4 minutes are on the clock. Mike, get us started.
Yeah, I mean, he looked sensational again. He did what he was supposed to do in beating Bobby Green under these particular circumstances, short notice and everything. And I do think he is incredibly worthy of a title shot. I mean, it's not his fault that these past couple fights against Rafael dos Anjos, against Beneil Dariush have fallen apart. He's the one who showed up on fight night, took replacement opponents, and did the best he could under the circumstances. So I think he is worthy. And as far as what would be the more favorable matchup for him, I think they're both good fights, but it's got to be Justin Gaethje, right? I mean, we already saw Justin Gaethje fight against Khabib. I'm sure Khabib would be able to provide Makhachev with insight on that fight. Justin Gaethje really seemed to struggle off his back in that fight, and I think that's where Makhachev could get him. It's all there. It's much more complicated. He's more than willing to go to the ground. He's got this dynamic, kind of fearless striking arsenal that he comes with now. So I think that's a much tougher fight for Makhachev. I think he would still probably be the favorite in it, and we have seen some early betting lines coming out where he's like a 4-1 favorite, which seems kind of crazy over Charles Oliveira, but nevertheless, I think he's probably going to be favored in both those fights. I think they're both very winnable for him, but of the two, which is the more winnable fight, I think it's probably Justin Gaethje, just because of the struggles that we've seen, off his back in the limited time we have seen that. I think it would be a problem for him if Makhachev could get him there.
Excellent points, connecting the dots there. Makhachev and Khabib. Yeah, I see the blueprint as well. 4.5 though. That's crazy. Danny, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I have to agree with Mike. I think here the easier fight, and I have to throw the air quotes in there because it's still a very tough fight. It'll be Justin Gaethje because one, Khabib already fought him. There is a blueprint. The camp already strategized and planned on, answering the challenges that Justin Gaethje presents. So there's already that blueprint in place. And also, Islam Makhachev is not entirely the same as Khabib. There are differences between the two, but they do sport very similar styles. So there is no reason to think that Islam Makhachev wouldn't be able to pull off that type of strategy with the tool set that he has. Also, between both fighters, I mean, we know that if you fight Islam Makhachev, you're going to go to the ground. That's just almost given, right? So when that happens with Gaethje, I mean, the threat is of getting back up and maybe connecting and getting a knockdown or knockout or whatever the case may be. But with Oliveira, you got to worry about the ground game. And I know Khabib is, one of the most dominant champions that's ever existed in the sport. And I've talked to Javier Mendez multiple times, and they said, look, the Tony Ferguson fight, it wouldn't have been as tough as people make it out to be. But the truth is that we never saw him with somebody that could fight off his back. I think probably the best grappler that he fought was maybe Dustin Poirier or RDA, who usually like to grapple and do well up top. And even then, that's not their main thing. So with Oliveira, there's just so many questions, right? We haven't seen that camp answer those challenges in a matchup against Tony Ferguson or somebody that's good attacking off their back. So all in all, the champion is the most dangerous challenger. So I think a fight with Justin Gaethje would definitely be more favorable for Islam Makhachev.
All right, Goes. Is it unanimous? Do you feel the same way, or are you on Team Gaethje?
I'm going to have to go the other way. I feel terrible saying it just because the guy's been such a stud, Charles Oliveira. But I feel like Makhachev could he's experienced. I think with a guy like Charles Oliveira, he could go to the ground with him. He could be okay. But the thing about Justin Gaethje is he's a dog, and he pulls that dog out of you. And I don't know that Makhachev has shown us, really even had the opportunity to show us that he could get into a dog fight. And Justin Gaethje does that to so many people. He pulls them into his type of fight. So I think it would be really, really tough. I would have him favored over both guys. But I do feel like there's something in Justin Gaethje that he's going to pull out of Makhachev that would make things a little bit more difficult.
Yeah. All right. Good analysis. We look forward to that fight. However, you never know, man. This thing might get tripped out because, look, guys, the lightweight division in the UFC is stacked with talent. This might be the marquee division, not only of the UFC, but I think in all of MMA. So I think it's worthy of a second topic. We're going to stay on this. This is your chance to put your business hat on. I want to know if you were the matchmaker promoter. Tell me, is Makhachev safe here, guys? Is he the number one contender for sure? Let me throw out some stuff here. RDA, he fights on Saturday. He's a former champ. He could derail plans. Dustin Poirier, he has a win over Gaethje. What if Gaethje wins? He could derail plans. You know, Gaethje might go on an Avenge Loss tour. Conor McGregor, he's the pay-per-view king. You know how the UFC feels about the cheddar. He could derail plans. And let's not forget, Beneil Dariush, he didn't retire, guys. He just had a minor knock. He could derail plans. So we got 4 minutes on the clock. Danny Segura, out of two.
Yeah, this one's tough because I do think he's the most deserving. Heck, I even think he's more deserving than Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje has only won one fight since he lost in his chance to claim the title against Khabib Nurmagomedov. If you compare just that one victory over Michael Chandler, which was a fantastic win, to 10 wins in a row that Makhachev has picked up in several years, I think that's far more impressive than just one win. So right off the bat, I think Makhachev is not only deserving now, but was deserving even before he fought Bobby Green. So I think Makhachev is at the top of the list. However, we know that there goes a lot more into giving title shots than just winning streaks. How much you sell, rivalries, etc. and etc. So in this case, he should be next, but you can't guarantee it. I mean, if you just look at the lightweight division, like as you mentioned, George, I mean, there's so many possibilities that could happen. But in my opinion, from a sporting side event, yes, Islam Makhachev should be next, and he doesn't need to fight anybody else. But stranger things have happened, so we'll see.
All right, Goes, you're an OG. What do you think, man? Can this guy hold up? It's not till May is when we're looking at the title defense. McGregor returns in the summer. What do you think?
I will say this until my face turns blue. This sport is a what have you done for me lately sport. So as of today, yeah, I feel like Islam Makhachev, he's in the driver's seat in this division. I believe if RDA gets a good win here, a good performance, it still probably won't be enough to overcome this type of hype that is behind Islam Makhachev. And unfortunately, and Danny kind of alluded to this earlier, like people kind of look at Khabib and Islam Makhachev as like the same guy. And I think people just want to see him back in that position. They want to see even the storyline behind it of Coach Khabib coaching his pupil to a title. I just think there's a lot behind that wagon right now. And George, you're right. There are a lot of roadblocks. Conor McGregor being the big one. It could derail at any moment. But I think the UFC's kind of past that at this point. I know we've said that time and time again, and they surprise us, but it would really look ridiculous at this point if that guy stepped in and derailed all of that. And with Dustin Poirier, we never really have a clear vision of what it is he wants to do. It kind of changes back and forth. So I don't see that being a problem. I do want to see the Beneil Dariush fight at some point. That's a fight that I feel like we've all been robbed of. I think it would be a great fight, but I think Beneil's probably going to have to take another matchup. So what's going to end up really the only thing that could maybe derail this a little bit would be injuries in that title fight, something of that effect. But I think he's in the driver's seat right now.
Or that barn burner of a title fight that needs to be run back. The UFC's not shy about that scenario. Mike, you've also seen it all. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to these questions and we're kind of speculating, it really comes all down to timing, I think, more so than anything, and just circumstances overall. Like Conor McGregor, of course, is always out there, but he has 2 fights left on his UFC contract. I do not think they're going to put him in a championship fight unless he re-signs a newer, longer-term deal, because the last thing you want is Conor McGregor going into like the last fight of his deal as champion. Just not going to happen, not going to work out for the best. Besides that, I think it's a pretty clear path for Makhachev, actually. He's He's not going to be fighting in the next few months with Ramadan coming out. That's why he kind of shooked away the idea of being a potential backup fighter for that title fight in May. So that's going to keep him out for a little while. You just look at the way the schedule is going to line up. The UFC typically goes to Abu Dhabi in September or October. Makhachev has already said that's where he wants his title shot to be. And if you look at kind of the way the schedule is, if Gaethje and Oliveira are fighting in May, that's a pretty good turnaround time, September, October. So to me, it lines up pretty clearly. As you guys said, maybe an injury pops up, something like that could change the circumstances here. But to me, it's kind of a pretty straightforward thing. Gaethje and Oliveira fight in May. Winner fights Makhachev in Abu Dhabi in September, October.
Solid points as always. I forgot we kind of used to have to go through that with Habib, the observance of the religious holiday of Ramadan. You're right about that. And then to point out the stuff going on with McGregor. I mean, I wonder if he could use that as leverage, by the way. Yeah, I'll resign if I walk into a title fight in July. Holy cow. I don't even want to think about it. All right. Also this past weekend, Gegard Mousasi defeated Austin Vanderford to retain his Bellator middleweight title. This was his second title defense in a row, third overall, and post-fight, Mousasi staked his claim as the top middleweight in the world. Do you all agree? Are you feeling him? If not, where do you rank him? He went into the fight as the number 6 middleweight in our USA Today Sports / MMA Junkie rankings. Goes. You're on the clock. 4 minutes. Do it.
Well, right now, I think his overall body of work it's pretty damn impressive when you compare the two. It's over multiple weight classes, multiple organizations. I give him a lot of credit there. But if you look at Israel Adesanya's career, that's the guy we're all comparing him to, it's not as long, but look at the murderer's row that he's had to go through. I mean, it's nonstop, and he's had to do it multiple times. So there's no question marks behind any of these. These are beasts in the sport that he's had to go through. So I think the argument stops there. I don't know that Gegard Mousasi could survive that sort of gauntlet that Israel Adesanya has gone through. Now, some of the names that have come up against short against Israel Adesanya, I think they could win a title over there. I mean, Gegard Mousasi is a great fighter, but I don't know that he could keep the title for that type of duration, feeling that sort of pressure, those type of monsters coming at him one after another. I love the fact that he said it. I love the fact that he meant it, but I just don't know that it's really a reality. So if I'm going to place him right now somewhere, it's probably going to be right below Robert Whittaker. And I feel like Robert Whittaker's accomplishments kind of get pushed to the side because we've lately just known him as the guy that's come up short against Israel Adesanya, but he's a great fighter too. Hell, that's the fight that I would want to see is those two before I would even want to see Israel Adesanya and Gegard Mousasi. But I do give him credit for speaking his mind and letting us know where he thinks he belongs.
It can't hurt, especially as he was telling us that he's not getting the monster love. You know what I mean? Sometimes you shout that stuff about yourself, give yourself a pat on the back, and then the sponsors come in. Mike Bond, what do you think, man? Where does he rate amongst the middleweights in your eyes?
Man, he could be number 2 in the whole world. I wouldn't, argue too hard with anyone who says so. And I'm obviously making the argument myself right here. I mean, he was doing really good work in the UFC, on track for a title shot in that middleweight division until Bellator lured him away through free agency. And I'm not going to hate on anyone for taking the money, of course, especially in this sport in this day and age. But the reality is Mousasi lost that chance by going over to Bellator to be considered number 1, just because that's not how it works. I mean, the UFC guy, the UFC champion is always kind of going to be up there, especially when it's Israel Adesanya, who has been doing the work he's been doing. But if those two fought, I think it would be more competitive than a lot of the title fights that Adesanya's had of late. I don't know if Mousasi would win that, just because I think that, in a striking fight, the length and the reach of Izzy and all that stuff would be very problematic for him. But on the ground, who knows if he was able to get it there. So when I look at that, I mean, how can saying he would be a more competitive fight for Izzy than pretty much anyone else? How can I not say he's number 2? So to me, Gegard Mousasi is an incredible fighter. He has been for years. I remember waking up in the middle of the nights watching him fight in Dream, 12 hours ahead over in Japan. So this is a guy who's been around the game forever, who's deserving of all his flowers. And, I look forward to seeing him every time he fights. And I think he is extremely elite, even still to this day.
No doubt about that. He's been everywhere and successful everywhere and in multiple weight classes. Danny, what are your thoughts, man? Was Gegard a little out of touch of reality, or what do you think?
No, I don't think so. And I think both Goes and Mike nailed it. I think Mousasi is clearly one of the best in the world today. I think easily he's a top 5 middleweight in general, regardless of promotion. Now, the very best, I think that's when things get a little bit trickier. We do got to keep in mind, and we just have to call it how it is. The opposition in Bellator is lesser than the UFC. He can get some tough matchups here and there, but all in all, if you look at his most recent fights and compare them against Israel Adesanya, clearly Israel has had a stronger schedule. So I do think he's one of the best. I think a fight between the two is actually very competitive. I wouldn't rule out that Mousasi could pick up a victory there, considering how crafty he is, and I think it's a fairly good matchup for him. But yeah, this is all interesting talk. I do think he's a top 5 middleweight in the world. But beyond that, 1 or 2, I think that gets a little tougher with some of the work that some of the UFC guys have done.
There's no doubt Gegard would be competitive in any of the fights, and I guess that's probably the strongest point we can make. It's just that by the numbers right now, he's not the number 1 middleweight in the world. All right, we got to turn the page, guys. This week is massive. UFC 272, of course. It is fight week. 2 guys that don't like each other get to punch each other in the face on Saturday night. And you know the story already, man. Former best friends, roommates, training partners, probably even Eskimo brothers. But but you know what? I know who you guys are going to pick because I read the stat picks on MMA Junkie every week. So what I want to know now is who has more at stake, and can the loser rebuild from the loss of a fight of this magnitude? Mike, back to the Great White North. It's on you.
Man, well, the stakes are very high here. I think, besides the title being on the line, this is about, as important of a moment and critical of a moment in both these guys' careers to do this fight. And I agree, the loser of this, I think, is, down in the pits pretty good. Of course, they're going to have a name and everything and still be able to get fights if they want them. But if they're looking for fights of this magnitude, it's going to take some serious work out here. So, man, who has more at stake? I don't really know. I guess it just depends on what their particular goals are. And I think for both these guys, the goal is to be UFC welterweight champion and get a 3rd fight with Kamaru Usman. And in order to do that, they need to win here. I think, of course, Masvidal, the way he lost the 2nd fight against Usman, getting knocked out, that's an even more difficult thing to market in terms of putting together a 3rd fight. So he needs to win this pretty bad to make that sort of emphatic on his behalf and start making that case. I don't think 1 win does it for him here, but Covington, you're already hearing Usman in interviews this week saying, a potential 3rd fight could happen if he does something impressive, if he gets a couple wins here. So I think Covington's road back to that is a little bit shorter, which makes me think even with a loss here, as long as it's not too devastating, he can kind of climb back there. So I think it's splitting hairs, honestly. I think they both have a ton to lose here. But for me, if I had to pick one, Masvidal is probably the guy with a defeat here. It's really deflating because it would be 3 losses in a row. It would be, a knockout to the champion. However this fight ends, a finish would be, very bad for him. And, that I think takes away all the clout that he had from that 2019, BMF champion year. So I will say Masvidal has more to lose here.
Yeah, man, I like that. All right, good word there, clout. Let's use that as well for Danny. Danny, you're in SoFlo, man. What about the clout in the 305? Aside from this fight, who has the most at stake here?
I'm going to go the opposite way. I think Covington has the most to lose here, and I think that's an important word. Let's keep using it, clout. Masvidal has a bunch of clout. Let's remember, this fight is big. Of course, Colby Covington has its part in it, but it's mainly because of Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal has become a star. He might not be as big as McGregor, maybe not as big as Diaz, but he's certainly around that sphere. That's certainly around sort of that territory. So I think a loss here certainly not good. I mean, a loss to either guy is not going to be good given how much BS they've talked and how much they've said about each other. But if I had to pick someone, I'm going to go with Covington, because Covington's brand, yes, he trash talks. Yes, he builds things up, through words and stuff like that. But his brand is also depending on winning. He was, UFC interim champion for a long time. He title contender, et cetera, et cetera. Jorge Masvidal is not exactly like Nick Diaz in the sense that he can lose a bunch of fights and be okay. But I think still people have interest in watching him. People still have interest in hearing him talk. So it's not necessarily married to winning. Even if Jorge Masvidal loses this fight, he's still a huge star. He can have potential fights with McGregor. He could fight Nate Diaz in a rematch. I mean, he's got options. Whereas Colby Covington, he's not really in that sort of level of clout. So he really does depends more on wins than Jorge Masvidal. So in this case, I'm going to go with Covington. And as Mike pointed out, I think Covington has a shorter path to the title, or at least a better case for a title shot. Jorge Masvidal doesn't. So I mean, if he takes a loss here, I mean that's gonna derail that.
All right, goes. You're not left with too much time, but I may give you a pass since Segura went on for a bit. I know you've followed these guys for a long time, military trips, all that stuff. You got the psych degree, man. Tell me about this. Let's dig deep into this.
I think Masvidal has more to lose here because, look, Kamaru Usman has been dominant. He's a dominant champ. He's been dominant over everyone but Colby Covington. Colby Covington has been able to steal rounds from him. So if Colby loses, he loses credibility to Jorge Masvidal, maybe to his former gym. But if Masvidal loses, that's 3 straight. He loses credibility within the division, and I think that's more important. So this is a guy with a big chip on his shoulder, Jorge Masvidal. He's not a guy I'd want to piss off. This is going to be a really good fight, but I really do feel like Jorge Masvidal has more to lose.
Nicely done. All right, good stuff, guys. Look, we got actually breaking news here as we're going to discuss this question. My question was going to be that with such a big spotlight on Covington Masvidal on Saturday night, the rest of the card hasn't been spoken as much, and I wanted you guys to tell me, about a pivotal fight that they should be watching and why. We're junkies, we get it, but the casuals, the hardcores, they need a little bit of more info. Danny, start things off and make a note of this. RDA will not be fighting Rafael Fiziev as of the recording of this fight, so hopefully you weren't taking that one.
No, I'm not, but it sucks to hear because that was a fight that I was looking forward to. But if I had to go with one, I'm gonna go with Edson Barboza versus Bryce Mitchell. I mean, that's a fantastic fight. Bryce Mitchell is a fighter that's sort of been picking up a lot of momentum. Very, very promising guy, and he's taking a big step up. This is the type of fight that you got to go, okay, is he at this level? Is he a contender, right? Because Edson has done it all. He's a veteran. I mean, if you beat him, it means something. A victory of Edson Barboza holds weight. And I know he's up in age, but he's also looked quite good. I know he got finished in his last fight against Giga, but prior to that, he was on a nice 2-fight winning streak. And some of those losses before that were also questionable a little bit. So I think that's a great fight. It's a great clash of styles, a fantastic striker versus a very good grappler. I'm all in for that fight. So we'll see what happens, but hopefully it doesn't get canceled. But that's the fight that I have my eye on.
Hey, I'm in for some leg kicks, a possible twister. I like that one. All right, goes. How about you?
I am not in for some leg kicks. Those are some of the nastiest leg kicks of all time. I'm actually going to go a different way. I'm going to go Alex Oliveira and Kevin Holland. They say that animals and people really at that are the most dangerous when they're backed into a corner. And I feel like both these fighters are backed into a corner in must-win situations. And that's going to drag the nasty out of these boys. I really think this is going to be a fight where it's going to come down to pace. And that pace is going to be them putting their foot on the gas and not taking it out the whole time. It's going to be fun because I think it will have its moments on the ground. It'll have its moments on the feet. I think it'll be everywhere. But really, it's that pace, I think, that's going to make it such a good fight. And because both fighters have so much to prove out there, they want to keep their jobs. I really think we're going to see everything come out of them. So I think that's going to be my choice for possibly even fight of the night.
That's a good one as well, goes. I really like both fighters. I can't remember fights that they've had where either one of them has sucked. All right, Mike Bond, how about you, man? Which one are you looking forward to the most?
Well, it was going to be RDA and Fiziev. I mean, hopefully Rafael Fiziev's COVID illness that has seemingly taken him out of this fight isn't too significant. But man, what a bummer for RDA, right? Like they were supposed to have this fight a couple weeks ago. Fiziev has his issues with the passport or his visa and can't get country. And then now this happens. So that's pretty devastating from RDA, who's already been out of action for well over a year. Hopefully they can get him a replacement. Who knows what's going to happen by, the time this recording is published and everything. But as of right now, super disappointing. That was going to be my fight to watch because I thought it had the most stakes in terms of, rankings and relevance to a title picture and stuff. If that fight's not happening, to me, I got to look down to the prelims to Marina Rodriguez versus Yan Xiaonan, because that is, to me, a potential title eliminator in the strawweight division, more so for Rodriguez than Yan, just because obviously she's been on a great roll. I think she had a case for a title shot as is, so I could very much see her getting that. I hope that's the fight that, if they don't get a replacement, is bumped up to the pay-per-view, because I think it belonged there anyways. And you can get more exposure to your potential next title challenger and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's the one to me. Obviously, we're kind of scrambling here and trying to figure out all the stuff that's happening, because this is a major blow to that card. But I still think there's some good fights on there. And if you're talking about one that has significant meaning to the title picture, it's got to be Rodriguez versus Zhao.
Man, that's a good one. I love me some Panda. And Marina Rodriguez, hopefully she's not called Emrod. That one's been beaten to death. But yeah, she's been on fire as well. And it sucks about this fight. I hope it's not starting to reach that jinx stage, because it's happened a few times now. And like we explained earlier, it's a pivotal fight. I just want to throw one in there, man. Marina Moroz, she's been pretty vocal on social media. You've probably already seen it. But I think she'll have the world at her hands, and everyone, all ears if she can get the win over Agapova there. I'm sure she'll have something to say about what's going on in her country of Ukraine, where it's very, very personal to her. All right, quick shout out to Samir Anwar. Man, what an excellent comment you left last week in the YouTube comments. You were spot on. I love stuff like that. And of course, always Cold Coffee making us look great. The guys did an excellent job. We're going to discuss all this next week. Spinning Back Clique, we'll be back here to do it again, man, and recap UFC 272 and all the other good stuff that happened.